Shri Vallabhadisha ki jai, Shri Giriraj Dharana ki jai, Srinathji ki jai. सभी वैष्णवन को जय श्री कृष्ण, जय जय Shri Radhe. Today is the 36th reading of the Shri Chaurasi Vaishnav Varta in English and Braj Bhasha. Today we are reading Varta 25 and thereafter Varta 26. 25 is the story of Yadvendra Das Kumhar from Mahavan, Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, Yadvendra Das is a bull in Nandaraji's herd named Madonmata. No other bull could come anywhere near him. Sri Thakurji used to feed him and bathe him in the Sri Yamunaji river. Yadvendra Das was born to a potter in Mahavan. He used to supply earthenware vessels to the home of Narayan Das Brahmachari. Knowing him to be a divine soul, Narayan Das invited him to partake of Mahaprasad. Yadvendra Das's intelligence was immediately purified. He requested Narayan Das to help him to become a disciple of Sri Acharyaji. Narayan Das advised him that he would have to remove himself from his family associates in order to do so. Yadvendra Das confirmed that he had already thought of this, that he would, from that day on, not be able to eat in his parents' house nor even drink water there, and also that he would only accept prasad from Vaishnavas of the path of grace. In fact, he said, I don't even want to go home. Narayan Das was pleased to hear this and invited him to stay at his house. When Sri Acharyaji comes here, you can take initiation and serve him. Thereafter, Yadvendra Das lived in Narayan Das's home and dealt in sawdust. When Sri Acharyaji came to Mahavan, he stayed with Narayan Das. Narayan Das requested him to initiate Yadvendra Das, which he did, with the Lord's name and Brahma Sambandh, and Yadvendra Das developed into a very fitting disciple. Part 1. Whenever Sri Acharyaji or Sri Gosaiji had to travel to other parts of the country, Yadvendra Das went with them and carried the baggage. He was capable of carrying a large amount of stuff at the same time. He carried all the tents with their awnings and struts together with supplies for 3 or 4 days. He also carried a small tent, and if any Vaishnava fell into difficulty along the way, he would go to the next stopping place and serve and protect them. Part 2. Once when Sri Gosaiji was in Gokul, he announced in the middle of the night of the 7th day of the dark half of the month of Phagun that it would be a very auspicious time to start digging the foundations for the temple. He then took rest. Yadvendra Das immediately began to dig the foundations. Within a few hours he had finished digging them, and there was a huge pile of earth which Sri Gosaiji saw when he woke up. He asked where the earth had come from, and a Vaishnava replied that Yadvendra Das had dug it out. Sri Gosaiji asked Yadvendra Das if this was true, and he replied, when you said it would be a good time to dig the foundations, I just got on with it. It took the other builders 1 whole month to fill in the foundations that Yadvendra Das had dug in just one night. He was very capable and powerful. When the temple was built, Sri Navneet Priyaji and some other Swarupas lived there. Sri Gosaiji loved and respected Yadvendra Das very much. There was a problem with stagnant water in the supply used for Srinathji, so Yadvendra Das dug a well not far from the mountain, by the side of Rudrakund. He used the mud he dug out to make many pots, but the water itself was salty. Yadvendra Das went to the Gangaji and, entering the waters, poured oblations into the river with his hands, whilst asking her favour to please make the water sweet. Only when he knew that the water was sweet did he come out of the river. Bhav Prakash. The reason for this is that the water of the Gangaji is considered to be the purest in the whole world, and Yadvendra Das wanted Srinathji to enjoy only the best of everything. Thus concludes Varta 25, the story of the accomplished Vaishnava Yadvendra Das Kumhar from Mahavan, although truly his story has no end. Commencing Varta 26, the story of Gosai Das Saraswat, who lived in Mathura. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, he is a parrot who lives in a kadamba tree by the side of Govinda Kund. When Sri Krishna would play his flute, this parrot would enjoy the nectarian sounds, which were the nectar from the Lord's lips. He was born to a family of Saraswat Brahmins who lived in the east. When he was 14 years old, he heard a Brahmin giving discourses on the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Sri Bhagavad Gita. He became a renunciate and left on a tour of pilgrimage places. He turned 24 when he arrived in Mathura. At that moment, Sri Acharyaji was performing his evening prayers on Vishram Ghat, and when Gosai Das caught sight of him, he pondered, I have been wandering around these holy places all alone, but now I feel the need to surrender to Sri Acharyaji. He requested to be taken as a disciple, but Sri Acharya refused, saying that Gosai Das's mind was fixated on visiting holy places, so how could he be suddenly stop and become a disciple? Gosai Das supplicated, "O Maharaj, I will do as you command, but I have had enough of travelling in such places. I will make a place to stay here in Mathura." Sri Acharya therefore initiated Gosai Das with the Lord's name and Brahmasambandh and told him to serve the Lord. Gosai Das asked Sri Acharya to give him a Swarupji to serve. A renunciate had a 4-armed Swarupji which the sadhu gave to Sri Acharya before setting off for Dwaraka. Sri Acharya bathed the Sri Thakurji in the 5 nectars and gave him to Gosai Das to serve. Gosai Das, Part 1. Gosai Das acquired a house in Mathura and began to live there. His Sri Thakurji soon began to communicate directly with him. There was one particular Vaishnava who used to come to Gosai Das's house for the holy sight of his Lord. That Vaishnava was always asking Sri Thakurji to come home with him so that he could also be able to serve him. Gosai Das therefore suggested that he come and live there with him so that he might be able to see the Lord every day. The Vaishnava refused because he really wanted to serve the Lord by himself. Not long afterwards, Sri Thakurji made Gosai Das ask the Vaishnava to take his Sri Thakurji home. The Vaishnava asked what he would then do. Gosai Das replied that he would go to Badrikashram and leave his body there. The other Vaishnava asked him if he would come home again if it just so happened that he didn't pass away over there. After all, it was impossible to predict the Lord's wishes. Gosai Das said in no uncertain terms that he didn't think the Lord would do that, but that if by chance he did, then he would come back and live in that Vaishnava's home. My Sri Thakurji is obviously very pleased with you, so let me see him one more time before you take him with you. I do not want to bring him to you. When Sri Thakurji came to his home, that Vaishnava served him very nicely, and Gosai Das went to Badrikashram. He suffered immense pains of separation and died right there. Gosai Das was thus a vessel of Sri Acharyaji's great grace, Bhav Prakash. He dropped his material form and became the parrot in the Leela. Part 1 continued. After some time, the Vaishnava received the news that Gosai Das had left his body. He thought to himself that this was the proof that a Vaishnava never dies, for he had indeed gone to Badrikashram and dropped his mortal coils. Bhav Prakash. Gosai Das served the Lord for some time. Then he realized who he really was, and Sri Thakurji told him to give him to that Vaishnava, and then go to Badrikashram. There he would suffer separation and then leave his body and attain the eternal Leela. The Lord told him, "Your practice is perfected." The Lord informed him. Gosai Das then went on his way. That Vaishnava is Sri Chandravaliji's Sakhi in the Leela. Her name is Chatura. He was born in Mathura to a family of Sanodiya Brahmins. His parents and wife all passed away, and so he was all alone. He became a disciple of Sri Acharya and had a strong desire to serve the Lord. The Lord told him in a dream to always have the sight of Gosai Das's Sri Thakurji, who would soon come to him to be served. That Vaishnava therefore always went to see this Sri Thakurji, and then he graced him by coming to his home. Here it is revealed that a Vaishnava can only do as much as and receive the relevant reward as their root nature in the eternal Leela permits. Thus concludes Varta 26, the story of Gosai Das Saraswat, although truly his story is endless. So thus concludes Varta 26. Tomorrow we go to Varta 27, the story of Madhav Bhatt Kashmiri from Kashmir. And here we'll take rest from Varta until such time as we are graced again tomorrow to hear these wonderful, encouraging and inspiring tales. Jai Jai Shri Radhe Shivalabhadhish ki Jai. Shri Gosai Ji Parama Dayalu ki Jai. Sabko Jai Shri Krishna. Radhe Radhe Ji.